And I give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Madam President, I would like to express my gratitude to the Swiss presidency for swiftly organizing this meeting at the request of Slovenia and my own country, Algeria. I also thank Mr. Philippe Lazzarini and Mrs. Lisa Downton for their briefings. These briefings highlight the horrifying consequences of a merciless Israeli war machine that has spared no one in Gaza. It is now extending its brutality into Lebanon. Madam President, massacres and killings have tragically become a daily reality in Gaza, and they continued unabated. In Gaza, over 42,000 people have been killed, 60% of them women and children, and nearly 100,000 people have been injured, some of them handicapped for their whole life. Shockingly, 6% of Gaza's population has been killed or wounded in the past year alone. In Gaza, the Israeli military has annihilated 900 families, erasing them entirely from the civil registry. In Gaza, at least 17,000 children are unaccompanied, definitely separated from their parents. They represent almost 1% of the 2 million displaced people, nearly the entire population of Gaza. In Gaza, 60% of buildings and infrastructure have been destroyed. Gaza cities now resemble ghost towns, apocalyptic scenes that are horrifyingly real. This is not a military operation against Palestinian military faction, Palestinian terrorists. This is a war against the Palestinian people themselves. As the situation is the West Bank, and the situation in the West Bank is not better, with continuing illegal settlement activity and unprecedented annexation of Palestinian land. Last year was also the deadliest in the West Bank since the Second Intifada in the beginning of this century. The Israeli occupying power's aim is clear: to push Palestinians out of their homeland, following the sinister goal of no Palestinian west of the Jordan. Madam President, yesterday, the Israeli military threatened to forcibly remove patients, displaced persons, medical staff from Kamal Adwan Hospital, from Al Auda Hospital, and from Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza. This comes in the context of the brutal military campaign the Israelis are waging against the Palestinian people in northern Gaza. This is a blatant violation of international law, of international humanitarian law, and it is a criminal attempt to implement the displacement plans pursued by the occupying authorities. It is how international humanitarian law treat patient and medical personnel. Is it the protection afforded under the Geneva Convention? The longer the international community turns a blind eye and remains silent in the face of these crimes, the more the Israelis' tyranny and arrogance grow. Silence has become more than mere complicity. It is now an active participation in this crime. As we witness this barbarity, we must acknowledge that it is a glimpse into the future, a future war devoid of morality, a future war devoid of humanity, a future war devoid of international norms. As this Security Council failed to hold the Israelis occupier accountable, it became emboldened, believing itself to be above the law. Those who remained silent or try to justify today cannot claim to defend the rule of law tomorrow, because there will be no law except the law of the jungle. Madam President, despite the immense suffering, the occupying power is not satisfied with the immediate devastation of Palestinian land. They seek to kill slowly the Palestinian in Gaza through famine, through starvation. They have tightened the blockade, restricting humanitarian aid. In September, according to the figures of the United Nations, only 52 trucks entered Gaza per day. They were more than 500 before October last year. And these 52 trucks are the lowest rate since last November. Meanwhile, 96% of the population in Gaza faces crisis or worse level of food insecurity. This is a deliberate act. And the success of the polio vaccination campaign in Gaza demonstrate that when the occupying power commits, scaling up humanitarian effort becomes possible. The Special Rapporteur on the right of food, Madam President, his name is Mr. Michael Fakhri, in his report to the Human Rights Council, detailed how Israel has weaponized starvation as part of its genocidal campaign against the Palestinian people. UN Security Council resolutions clearly prohibit starvation as a method of warfare. It is a war crime, and this Council must act decisively to preserve what remains of its credibility. It is time to impose a ceasefire in Gaza. Madam President, amidst this catastrophe, the occupier has not spared humanitarian personnel. 222 UNRWA staff members have been killed. Two-thirds of UNRWA premises have been destroyed or damaged. Moreover, the occupiers advanced bills halting UNRWA operation. UNRWA, the witness of the failure of the international community to uphold the right of the Palestinians. UNRWA, the backbone of humanitarian action in the occupied Palestinian territory, particularly in Gaza. For years, the Israeli authorities has made clear its desire, its will to dismantle UNRWA, because it symbolizes the Palestinian refugee and their inalienable rights. We reiterate that the rights of Palestinian refugees are not subject to statutes of limitation and are guaranteed by the international law, which cannot be tailored to fit the occupier's agenda. The fate of the refugees must be and will be decided by themselves, not by the Israeli occupying power. Madam President, to conclude, military force will not bring security, will not bring stability. The occupation will not last. Security in the Middle East can only be reached through achieving the Palestinian people's right and ending the occupation of Arab lands. The Council, the Security Council, should endeavor to make this goal a reality. If we do not act now, the Middle East will be engulfed in an unprecedented war. I thank you.
Je remercie le représentant de l'Algérie.
I thank the representative of Algeria.